Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where decks are not optimized but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
It's about that time again. It's about that time we do a Temple's Treasures.
Yes.
We're halfway through the season, so that means we got a little show we like to call Temple's Treasures, where we highlight underutilized older cards. Because, I mean, if they're underused newer cards, maybe they just, I don't know, haven't seen it yet. But we each pick some cards, bring it to the table, talk about them. That's it. Got some rules in place for this. One, in less than 2,000 decks on EDHrec.com, because then you really know. They're little niche cards.
That's right.
And two, what was the second one?
Pre-8th.
Right. First printed before 8th edition.
Yes.
So these are older cards. We're talking about old bordered beauties that just don't see enough play, whether it's because they're frankly not great, which we'll see plenty of those, or just hidden little, like, ooh.
Well, now, Andy, you say not great. I say niche.
Okay.
Yeah. I think just about all of the cards that we're going to talk about are going to be good in at least a particular deck.
Yeah.
At least that's the way I look at it. I'm not gonna suggest a card out here and say that this is a good card, but you shouldn't run it in any commander deck. There are decks where these cards belong, and some where they don't. But these are older cards that you're probably not going to see. I mean, they can have reprints, but for the most part, most of them don't. And that's part of the reason why you probably haven't seen them yet. So
yeah.
We thought we'd take an opportunity to show a few of these off for you.
Yeah.
And Andy, I think we're talking about Red Instance this week, right?
Yes. Previously, we've talked about enchantments, we've talked about sorceries. Now we're halfway through Instance. But I think overall my experience with this was once I started digging for these treasures, there were a lot of them. It was surprising how much I went, oh, I want to figure out how to play this.
Yeah. The only one I noticed was, it's red, they're instants, so you're going to get a lot of direct damage spells. There's just a lot of them. We're not going to include Lightning Bolt because that's not going to meet the EDHrec criteria. It's in too many decks. But and that's true at least of some of the more popular instants that you would know. So just because we didn't pick the one you were thinking of, it's likely because it was just a little too popular. So, but yeah, that's the part that I noticed was a lot of direct damage. I tend to shy away from a lot of that now just because doing, a little bit of direct damage once in a commander game, oftentimes I don't think that's enough for a card. So I tended to move away from that just a little bit, but we go all over the place. So.
Oh, for sure. Do you wanna start us off?
I will start us off. So my first card, it's costs 1 and a red. It's called Headlong Rush. Obviously an instant. Attacking creatures gain first strike until the end of the turn. Now, it's an instant, so it doesn't have to be your turn. So if you've got an opponent attacking another opponent, you can mess with combat pretty badly doing this. I mean, for the most part, who's kidding who, you're going to use it on your own stuff because you know it's coming, and you're going to wait for the right opportunity. A lot of times you're swinging in mostly to see if they decide to block. And if they decide to block, then you can punish them for it. And if they decide to let stuff through, well, you know what? I'm just going to keep that card in my hand, wait for the next turn, and I'll run it then. For essentially 2 mana, this is very easy. And the picture tells the full story. You're running this in goblin decks. You're running this in decks that have a lot of creatures because just the mass of first strike alone is just going to be brutal.
Yeah.
So
this goes real well in like a Rakdos deck where you've got like Death Touch or just anything that either you're going Death Touch with this or you're going wide with this.
Yes.
It's great. I mean, this has so many. This is less niche than I thought it would be. But I dig it.
This isn't something I think you're going to want to see in a lot of your dragon decks. Flying is generally enough evasion, and when you've got a creature that big, the first strike is not as important, but when you're talking on the ground, and like you said, Andy, I hadn't even thought about Death Touch, and yeah, that makes perfect sense. Death Touch and First Strike are a delightful combo. So anytime you
sure.
can get those two together, that's the way to go. So
Yeah.
So just before we go on to yours,
Yeah.
I got to read the flavor text.
Okay.
A landslide of goblins poured toward the defenders, tumbling, rolling, and bouncing their way down the steep hillside. I love it.
That's great. That's joyful. This is in 137 decks. But speaking of Death Touch, my next one is called Brawl. Just not necessarily, gives things Death Touch, but it goes well with things with Death Touch. Brawl is 3 red, and for an instant, until end of turn, all creatures gain... Oh, never mind. I read this horribly wrong. All creatures gain this creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature. This is still very exciting. This is symmetrical. And people will do anything in response. So it's gonna be like what is it? There was one that came out last year where it was like, you have thing fight person to your left or whatever.
Picture Apex Altasaur, but without that level of control. The best part about this, you play it, and then it becomes a case of who's going to tap first, because everything stacks. And then when it all goes backwards, it all goes back up. And you can really mess with stuff.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing here is that these are all punches and not fights.
Right.
So like it's a chain of things, and sometimes the chain might loop back on itself.
This is as chaos as you want, as you're going to get with red, without actually just swapping ownership of cards. The thing I like about Brawl is that if one of your opponents has a large creature that is menacing the entire board, it won't take long for the other opponents to recognize what's happening here, and they can gang tackle that one creature. So you can have 5 creatures all tap to do 1 point of damage to that 7/5 creature. That 7/5 creature can only tap and do 7 damage to one target creature. So they're going to take down that 1/1. So in one of those situations where maybe it's better when you only have a bunch of 1/1s, maybe it's better when, or maybe you're in a better situation where you've got creatures with very large toughness, so that you can, so that you're not the one being targeted. It becomes this dance as far as when you're going to play this. So
this also goes quite nicely with Standard Bearer.
Yes.
1 and a white, 1/1. If an opponent plays a spell or ability that could target a flag bearer in play, that player chooses at least 1 flag bearer as a target. So as you're fighting all their stuff, they can only fight the Standard Bearer in response. So very cool.
Yeah. No, I like this one. That's a lot of fun.
And this was in 252 decks.
Perfect. My next one, Blood Frenzy. Also only 2 mana. It's 1 and a red. It reads, you can cast this spell only before the combat damage step. Target attacking or blocking creature gets +4/+0 until the end of the turn. Destroy that creature at the beginning of the next end step. Now,
Sure.
I played this card a bunch. The joy with this one is it's a great way to, one, you can tack on 4 damage to an opponent. If you're swinging in with a bunch of 1/1s, one of the ones that gets through gets the +4. So you do 5 points of damage instead of 1. Yes, you lose your creature. Oh well, it was a 1/1. You weren't dying about that. Or you can save it so that when you're attacking, you look at how they block, and then make a decision if you want. I see an opportunity to take out one of their creatures, and my creature's going to die anyway. Then the downside on this just disappears, and you can use it there. The other way to use it, just as a way to destroy a creature, and sure you can only cast the spell only before the combat damage step, but you can make this work. So it's just joyful. I love this. I love playing this on other opponents' combat steps or just before their combat step, so that essentially, oh great, now they have a 4, a +4/+0 creature. Fine, it's dead at the end of this turn, so they've got one shot with it, but you're getting rid of it, and a lot of times you're using it on, on that creature that never attacks, but has that ability that you just want gone. So,
well, you have to. Oh yeah, I guess if it's blocking, yeah, because it has to be part of combat. But it's great, especially like you were saying, like in other people's combat steps, because it's just the rare direct or like targeted removal in red. Like it's not damage based, and that's excellent. So
right, because I mean. The restriction as far as when you can cast it isn't really a restriction. I mean, cast it only before the combat damage step. Well, okay, but once I know where that creature's attacking, it's not coming at me. Here, get an extra +4. Maybe you can take out one of the opponent's creatures that I want dead anyway. Yeah. And your dude's also going to die. This is all upside. And like you said, it's a 2 mana creature destruction spell. I really like that.
Yeah, it's great.
So it is in 828 decks.
Okay.
So it's in a few more, but it's still there.
My next one is also targeted removal. It's called Fissure, and sure, it's 3 red, so it's 5 mana for an instant, which is a lot. But it says bury target land or creature. And this is excellently flexible. I think the 5 mana is absolutely worth it because, like we were talking about, you don't get targeted removal in red very often. But you also get rid of Mazes of Ith. You get rid of, you force their hand on their wasteland. You get, Gaia's Cradle type things.
I appreciate that there are cheaper ways to destroy a land. But this is getting a land or a creature. So if you happen to be in that game where everybody's land just produces mana, you're not really that interested in wiping and taking out one of their lands. There's always a creature to take out. Yeah. Maybe 5 mana is a little on the heavy side, but it's an instant, and you do have that flexibility. There are plenty of games where that Maze of Ith or that I don't know, take your pick,
or like.
Exactly.
Any of your, what's the blue-green one we always talk about? Alchemist Refuge.
Alchemist Refuge. There's piles of them out there that sometimes that Rogue's Passage doesn't get enough attention. You can get rid of that Rogue's Passage with this. That can be a big boon for some.
But I think even especially in mono red, if you're playing mono red, there's not enough single target removal, especially at instant speed.
Right.
And this does that, and that's excellent. Fissure is in 531.
We are roaring along here. My next, About Face. This costs 1 red. 1 red. It reads, switch target creature's power and toughness until the end of the turn. That's it. This is so much better than people realize. There are so many times when making that flip just does so much. Whether your creature's taking direct damage and it's not, and it's a 4/2, or you are, you're swinging in with something that's a 2/4 and now you're going to get to flip it. You've got opponents who are coming in, and you need to switch the power and toughness. And it also changes the effects. That's the other part. So that locks it on Warhammer, giving it +3/+0. Now gives it +0/+3. All of this sort of thing is just. I love the way that sets up. I love the flexibility it offers. Obviously, you're looking at a combat-centric deck, but
you're in red.
You're in red, and that's the kind of decks I like to play anyway. So Yeah, I've been lucky enough to run about face against someone who's playing Doran, and that was a whole lot of fun because suddenly about face is a kill spell because it destroys their commander.
Doran has 0 power.
Yeah, I believe Doran's a 0/5. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and like that's the great thing, right? And I like that it's not base power and toughness, which is kind of what you're saying. And like if you say like you're up against a 2/4 and you have 2 power something, like two 2/4s against each other, right? They hit each other for 2 power, and now they're both 2/4s with 2 damage marked, and you flip one of them. Now it's a 4/2 with 2 damage marked, and it dies. And like that's the big brain plays here with red.
Yes, there's so many ways to do this. Like I mean, you can do it before combat. If it's one of these situations where you just don't want them to swing at all. Like I'm not looking to block, so I'm going to take your 2/7 or your 7/2 creature, whatever, and just flip it. So now you're like, well, it's not even worth my trouble. Great, now I stopped you from swinging at all. I don't even lose a creature because you're just not swinging. I don't have to put anything in front of it. I don't have to risk not, it's just all kinds of benefits for this card, and I really appreciate that in an instant that costs 1 red. Yeah, I'll take that. So About Face is in 279 decks on EDHREC.
My next one, my third one, is 3 in a red. It's called Warpath. It's an instant.
Oh.
It says Warpath deals 3 damage to each blocking creature and each blocked creature. So attacking and blocking creatures, both. I'll start it with this. This is only in 43 decks. And in a multiplayer format, that's insane. This card does wonders on any of your opponent's combat steps, especially the ones that you're not involved in.
Oh, yes.
So say you have an opponent who attacks your other 2 opponents, and you use this after combat damage is done, because there's that, the Josh Lee Kwai of you've got that tiny moment after combat damage is done, but you're still in combat. This can finish off the rest of every combated creature. Even you're in red. You're playing a lot of small things. Sure, it'll kill a bunch of your stuff, but you're gonna be playing it out again. You're much less worried about your creatures, especially when you have this spell. It's not like it's coming out of nowhere. You're playing it when you do.
I look at this and I think to myself, the red goblin player who is being forced to chump block, or who has to deal with these oversized creatures that they just can't deal with. Your creatures are going to die anyway if you block. So what is Warpath going to do? Add 3 more damage onto a creature that's already dead? It doesn't matter at that point. At that point, it's just 3 damage onto the player that's attacking you. It just hammers in. The other piece with Warpath is if you got a way to show it off while it's still in your hand. Now, maybe you whoops, and it falls onto the table and you pick it back up. Maybe it's in your graveyard and you can get it back into your hand. However, if your opponents know you have this, suddenly 6/1/1s coming in, does it make sense to block? Because whatever you block with is gonna die. So unless you're blocking with 1/1s already, there's no profitable way to block. So suddenly they become less reluctant to do that. It can also be a case of if they know it's there, nobody's attacking anyone. Because, the 5/5 that comes in and gets blocked by a 2/2 is still dying. Who's swinging into that? So it can be interesting on both sides, whether it's a surprise or whether people know it's coming.
For sure. And I think the niches that this fits in are actually, like, many. Like, I think that there are a lot of niches that this fits in. First, I mean, of course, my first idea was Mardu Aristocrats, where you're going to be wanting your stuff dead anyway. And if you pull this out, it's one of the few cards in your deck that is good outside of the deck.
Right.
But also lure decks. Like, if you're playing a creature that lures everything, if it has to be blocked by everything, then this is great, you know? Like, it will have all of one person's creatures blocking a thing, and then you play this post damage. There was a third one that I thought of. Fire Song and Sunspeaker.
Thank you! I was just about to say it. I'm like, yes!
Because it gives it lifelink.
Right. And even if an opponent is swinging at another opponent, or they're swinging at you, I mean, sure, you're going to give up a few creatures because you have to make them blocked, but, man, that's a lot of damage. You know, if somebody swings with 4 creatures and somebody else uses 2 to block, then there are 2 attacking, or 2 creatures that were blocked and 2 creatures that are blocking. So 4 creatures are each going to take 3 damage. That's 12 damage, or 12 life you've just gained with Angel Song, with Fire Song and Sunspeaker. And that's in a situation where only 2 creatures got blocked. I mean, sometimes it's more than that. Oh yeah, no, that's a great one. Okay, so my last one, it's 3 mana. It's 2 and a red. It's Demoralize. Each creature can't be blocked this turn except by 2 or more creatures. In other words, all creatures gain menace until the end of the turn. Now, you could say all creatures gain menace. The benefit of this is, obviously, if you're swinging, then you're the attacker. You've got all the attacking creatures. They get menace. If you've got opponents swinging at each other, you can still play this. It doesn't say your creatures. It says all creatures.
But so, Bruce.
Yes.
You didn't finish the card.
Well, the threshold. So if you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, creatures can't block this turn.
What?
So, in the right deck, this is essentially swing out. No one can block. In the wrong deck, this is still all your creatures get menace. Anybody who's played against anybody else who's running cards that give their creatures menace understands how difficult this is. There are a lot of games in Commander where you don't have 4 creatures. And if you don't have 4 creatures, you can't even block 2. Anybody playing Demoralize is coming in with more than 2 creatures. So you're looking at taking some damage here. This is such a treat.
It's a weird one. It's a weird one.
Oh, it definitely is.
I think the weirdest part is the fact that it's an instant. Like, where do you play this if not sorcery speed? You know? I guess you go into combat and then you play it. Like,
yes, you go into combat and play it, or you go into combat, declare the attackers, but before blockers are declared, I'm gonna play this.
It's just a weird timing thing.
Right. I mean, if you played it before,
it's not hugely influential that it's an instant, but it's like a real cool card. I love it.
Right. And if you're playing it on an opponent's turn, I guess maybe you're looking to encourage them to swing with more creatures, so you play it earlier. I don't know, but it really throws things out there, and I think that it's real. This is a fun card, and as somebody who's looked for Threshold a few times, if you're not trying to get there, it can be a little difficult, but far less so nowadays. There are so many decks that mill, so many cards that end up, draw and discard a card. Getting to 7 cards in your graveyard just isn't that hard. So I think most times you're not going to... The menace part is going to be cute, but no one's blocking. So
my last one. I was going to go with Outmaneuver. If you don't know Outmaneuver, we've talked about it on the show before. Go check it out. Real cool card. But I wanted to save this last spot for Blind Fury. This card is 2 red, instant. All creatures lose trample until end of turn. Double all combat damage assigned to creatures this turn. This hoses your opponent's attack. Your opponent swings out with, say, Crater Hoof. Swings out, expecting you to block maybe, but like expects to win. So they aren't holding anything back. You play this. You block everything. Now they're wide open for 3 more players to attack.
Right.
This isn't a game-winning card, but this is a stop the game from ending card. Like, and not necessarily in like a Cyclonic Rift kind of way. In like this is just a cool, different way to stop somebody's progress.
This isn't Rift and it isn't Fog. Fog just means I've stopped this from happening for 1 turn, and on the next turn I'm still going to get whomped. This one, it's like, I have stopped this. I likely don't have any creatures myself, but you certainly don't either. And that's, and then there's 2 other opponents who can now look at the guy who was about to end the game for you and say, this is the guy we need to deal with.
And who's to say? You're playing red. Maybe you have a lot of first strike. Maybe you will kill their stuff. So
Maybe.
I like the symmetrical effect of double all combat damage assigned to creatures this turn. I like that you can pull this out after blockers are declared.
Right.
Just to make sure that they don't, I don't know.
No funny stuff.
Great. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love this card, and would you believe it? This is in 164 decks. I need to pick up a place out of this one.
That is a fun card. As far as the only real downside to this one is the 4 mana cost.
Yeah.
But
you're playing this to save your hide at the end of a game. You've probably got some extraneous mana here and there.
Now the joy is that if you can play it with one of the other double damage enchantments that red has, it'll really ramp things up a bit.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same thing. I said the same thing after the end of each of these Temple Stretch. Check out some of these older cards. Remember, a lot of times these are cards that were made back in the day when multiplayer Magic, forget about even Commander, but they didn't think multiplayer Magic was a thing. So you're going to find a lot of cards back then that either they're going to be lousy in multiplayer because they don't consider multiple opponents, or they're going to be really good. And you can find these gems out there and cards that don't think about the fact that you might not be involved in the damage, in combat damage. There are all kinds of stuff like this. It's great to take a peek at some of these older cards and go for them. And I will say, I think most of the ones we looked at here probably weren't worth more than 50 cents each. So
yeah.
So it isn't like we pulled something off the reserve list that costs $45 or something.
Not this time.
Not this time. Done that before, but not this time. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that'll do it for us this week for Temple's Treasures. Again, go check out these cards. Have fun with it. Let us know your own little treasures. That's gonna do it. We're Temple of Falsepod. We're decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I'm Bruce.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. If you're on YouTube, press that subscribe button. You get to see all the cards on the screen. It's great. High production quality. Yeah, but have a great night. Play some Magic for me, and may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait, before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is @manaburned, and I'm @AndyWeekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, like a video there, leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your 5th land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!